So I'm in this dark room. That machine's on the table. He's sitting across, like, to me from on this side. And I put my arm down. He puts the stuff on me. And I am, like, pouring with sweat.
Welcome to Queen City News Plus. Here we got Order in the Court today, and I'm Brian Blakely.
And I'm Chief Legal Analyst Khalif Rhodes.
Khalif, how you doing today, buddy?
I've been better, man. My voice, Brian, I have no idea. Well, I actually have an idea
exactly what happened.
Going to a 3-day wrestling event, probably not the best idea. But day 2 had zero voice. Day 3, man, I tried. When your son has to tell you, just tell me, and I'll say it. You got a problem.
Are that dad that's sitting out there yelling and screaming, trying to litigate his wrestling matches, and I love it. You're passionate, just like I am on a baseball field all weekend.
I'm giving them instruction on what to do, or at least trying to tell them to maneuver. I know enough about it, but I know for sure that it was like, this was the largest event we've been to probably in a long time, so it was crazy.
All right, well, you are going to make it through today, and I know
100%, 100%.
That's what the toughness is of a wrestler, and you are the toughness of a wrestler and a litigator today in court. All right, we got court is in session. We're going to be talking about several cases, of course. First one's going to be a legal first here, Khalif, and that is a Texas man is suing a California doctor, and the plaintiff accuses the physician of murdering his unborn children by mailing abortion pills across state lines. Now, the doctor is accused of adding 2 illegal self-managed abortions in 2024 after receiving payment via Venmo. Texas is one of the most restrictive abortion laws, with nearly all of those abortions banned in the state. Khalif, I ask you, testing how far pro-life litigants can go to sidestep the blue law abortion laws.
Brian, I loved law school. It was fun because you get these interesting questions of first impression. That's where there's really no court precedent, no case law to support it. While I think there are a number of different things that touch this case that it probably will help us get to a resolution. This is a first impression for, I want to bring a wrongful death claim against a person living in another state. And so we got to step back and figure out, well, how the heck did we get here? Obviously, Roe v. Wade, precedent for 50 plus years. Dobbs' decision comes. Supreme Court says there's no constitutional guarantee to abortion in the United States. States, you guys individually decided we're going to wash our hands of it, kind of like pilots. They didn't want anything to do with it. All right, good. The states have figured it out. Red states, you're going to have no access to abortions. Blue states, you guys are going to have unlimited access to abortion. And then you guys duke it out. That sounds great, except for each individual state in our country doesn't live in a box. They don't live in their own states. They are these United States. And because they're connected, it's easy for folks to go across lines. It's easy for doctors with teledoc information to be able to call up and get on the phone with someone and ship things. And so because of that, the Supreme Court has kind of pushed us into this situation we have here. So you got this guy, files his lawsuit, wrongful death. It's federal court. So he's going to bring a claim against a person in California. First thing we're saying is, what's the claim? All right, we got wrongful death. We got some state claim issues. We got some federal issues. The state things are saying in Texas, you can't bring claim against the actual person that gets the abortion. So you can't bring claim against the woman, but you can bring it against third people that help. That's how he'll get access to the doctor there. However, he also has federal claims. Comstock Act. This is old. You're talking about 1873, Brian. This is because they didn't want folks sending obscene material through the mail. And so that's, people producing magazines like Playboy, obviously before their time, or Hustler, things like that.
Can that be applied to this case, though?
That's the goal. That's what they're attempting to do. And I think it fits there-ish. How does it fit there? The Comstock Act has been talked about and litigated that you cannot send obscene information in the mail, and they've defined obscene information as including abortion-related information. Materials. That's the key word. Materials. They're not sending abortion materials. These doctors are sending abortion pills. And so those boxes, as you just saw on the screen, they're not showing any graphic images of an abortion or the step-by-step procedure of what it looks like to have an abortion. It just says the name of the pill on the box. That's going to be the test that the court has to say, can the Comstock Act apply here? Should it apply here? And was this what we intended on when we created this? And I'm not sure if that's what it was. On the state level issue, I think you'll have an issue with Texas is saying you can get access to bring a claim against someone, a third party. California, like a lot of these blue states, has these shield laws that protect the individual states or individuals in their state. And so they're saying, We know that the red states are implementing these laws. How can I protect folks in my state if they want to help people get an abortion? Okay, we add this shield law to say you can't be held liable even if another state has it illegal. The court is now going to have to say, we have two different states' laws that are problematic. How do we decide this? I would hate to have to be the one to make this decision because it's not going to be easy.
Well, and that's the other thing, too. We see a lot of this division here between the red state, blue state, and the laws, and a lot of this will end up in the Supreme Court. Obviously, the Supreme Court, very conservative, 6-3 majority leaning that way. And a lot of those cases like this will lean toward the conservative.
Yeah, the court, obviously, they tip their hat at the cases that they want to hear. And so when you don't make a decision definitively, when you say, we're not going to say that it can't occur, we're just going to say that the states can decide on it, you've already opened up the door to have these types of things. Now, as a country, we like uniformity. You know, if you're in the United States, you can do X, Y, and Z. But when you say now you can only do it in certain states or you can in other states, it's now going to give equal access to justice, equal access to right. That's going to be a case of first impression on a number of concerns for the Supreme Court to have to address. In the factual issues of this case are extremely crazy. This person has a girlfriend, but she's got her ex-husband involved as well, had 2 abortions, currently pregnant again. I mean, there are so many things. Like, this is like a novel. If you were a law school professor, which I was at one time, this would have been great to have on the final because you're like, I want you to break down multiple issues at the same time. I mean, you could have threw some mailbox clause issues in there. That's if you got it in the mail in time and you missed your filing date, that's when they kind of throw in civil procedure. You could have threw that, and this would have been an excellent example, but it's real life. And that's the part that a lot of people are recognizing they're walking through right now, that the Supreme Court's Dobbs decision really is testing the boundaries of litigants and of the courts and how far they're willing to police in or let go of things within the system.
Yeah, it is certainly a case that we will keep following here on Queen City News. I know you will, Chief Legal Analyst Khalif Rhodes. And that's our end of our first segment right now. We're going to take a short break. And when we come back on the other side, we're going to be talking about another situation with the laws as far as executive orders and birthright citizenship, where a U.S. District Court judge blocked President Trump's executive order on that. And the White House is responding to that. We'll have that response when we come back. You are watching Order in the Court. Court is in session here. We'll be right back on Queen City News Plus. All right, welcome back here to Queen City News Plus. We got Order in the Court today, a second topic that we're going to be talking about with our Chief Legal Analyst, Khalif Rhodes here, who's got some good hot water to get that throat coat going right now to get him ready to litigate and talk about everything. We're talking about the White House. They responded on Friday to a U.S. District Court judge who is blocking President Trump's executive order on birthright citizenship, and that ruling nationwide injunction granting the more than a dozen states who had sued over the order that is still in effect because there was no workable or narrow alternative that would have given the plaintiffs.
Again, the Supreme Court does us puts us in a bad situation, does a disservice. When the Supreme Court listens to a case, let's start with that part. Typically, it's when it's a constitutional question. We have that here, 14th Amendment. That's clearly a constitutional question. Or when you have situations where a lower court has ruled one way, another lower court has ruled another way, and you have conflicting decisions. And the Supreme Court will come in as the superior court and say, look, I'm going to take you both to the side, you inferior courts, and I'll tell you what to do. And that's exactly what you would want to have happen. Sometimes they do these things called emergency orders, where they'll listen to a case on an emergency basis and they won't give us a decision. They'll just say, granted or denied, send it back to the lower court to allow them to make a decision. Most recently, that's what has occurred. The Trump administration has done something. A person in the state files a claim in the U.S. District Court. The U.S. District Court rules against them. The Trump administration will appeal it, but also ask for emergency appeal at the Supreme Court level. On emergency appeal, the Supreme Court will say, hey, we'll lift the stay, we'll remove whatever injunction was there, and we'll allow the lower court to actually hear the case. Well, that's becoming problematic because with this birthright citizenship case, they did address this. They did say that they did not address the underlying issue. But the Supreme Court did say that nationwide injunctions cannot be used as they have been used in the past, but now need to be used only, and that's what you talked about earlier, if it's a last resort, if there's no workable, narrower alternative. So what does that mean? I'll give it to you in practice. if you're a kid and you go to your dad and you say, Dad, I want to go play outside. And then the dad's like, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to let you go play outside. And then you go to your mom and your mom says, you ask her the same question and she says, no, go back and ask your dad. Do you think the dad is going to give you a different answer because he just told you earlier? No. That's what the Supreme Court is saying in this case. Judge Sorkin, who heard this case earlier, that made a decision on the merits, that issued an injunction, hey, you guys, go back to his court. What did you expect that he would do? Then grant an injunction the same way he did before because the facts haven't changed. He reviewed it and said, look, the Supreme Court told me to do this. They said I got to review this again, and I got to go through the standard of what an injunction is. Likelihood of success of the marriage, irreparable harm, this balancing of the equities, and what does public policy say about it? And now this additional requirement that the Supreme Court wants me to make sure that it's narrowly tailored, that it's no workable alternative, and basically that my back is against the wall. Well, he says, yes. I didn't expect anything different. Exactly what I said would happen when the Supreme Court came out with this the first time. I said, when they send it back to the courts, they've left the opening for two things to happen. That now there will be an increase in class action suits, and we've seen that. There's been a spike in class action suits suing the government for things that they've done, and you'll see an increase in courts doing exactly what this judge said. Hey, I already heard this case. The injunction, my rationale for setting an injunction is still there. So until the Supreme Court addresses this, the underlying issue on the 14th Amendment, this case will continue to go exactly like I anticipate. This judge will rule against the government. It will go to the Court of Appeals. The Court of Appeals will rule against the government, and then it gets to the Supreme Court. And now it's a mixed bag. Brian, I'll be honest with you, I can't tell you what the Supreme Court will do.
Yeah, well, we know the conservative Supreme Court, when it comes to these type of issues that we were just talking about in the last case, that they will likely rule in favor of the Trump administration. And the White House did respond. It was spokesperson Abigail Jackson. She said that these courts are misinterpreting the purpose in the text of the 14th Amendment, and they do look forward to be vindicated on the appeal.
Yeah, they want to be vindicated on the appeal, and that's great because if you can appeal it, you can get your way up to the Supreme Court and get to that home cooking that you talked about, where most of those decisions,
home court,
right,
yeah,
right, where they've been leaning heavily to the Trump administration. But what I can tell you is, if you look at precedent, if you look at history, if you look at all the cases that have come before, the nationwide injunctions, let's talk about that portion, have been used historically for a number of things. And so this is where I am confused that the Supreme Court ruled the way they did and instructed lower courts to do this going forward. However, if we talk about the 14th Amendment portion, that's the portion where I am confused. These are American citizens. Historically, they would have been. You could go all the way back to the original case that decided it when this Chinese citizen went back to China, had parents that were not from America, was born here, had left, went to China, tried to come back, was denied access, sued, and they said, yes, he was clearly a citizen. That case has been the law of the land forever. So now to challenge that under the jurisdiction thereof is the language that this Trump administration is trying to challenge within the 14th Amendment, I think is unfathomable because previously this would have been something that would have been a joke. If someone would have brought this and said, hey, I want to challenge the citizenship of a person that's naturally born in this country, every attorney in America would have said, get out of here. But now this administration has justified this argument. The White House is now doubling down and saying they can't wait and look forward to being vindicated on appeal. But I can tell you that I would be hard-pressed to find any court outside of our Supreme Court that would agree with that rationale.
Yeah, well, we'll find out soon on that appeal and also on that probably likely a case that'll be going to the Supreme Court. So that's going to wrap it up for our second one. We're going to take a short break here. When we come back, we're going to talk about another issue. The White House pulled the plug on the Pentagon Polygraph test that they were doing. And we'll have more on that coming up right after the break here. You're watching Order of the Court here on Queen City News Plus. And welcome back to Order in the Court. You got Brian Blakely and Khalif Rhodes here, and we're talking about our last topic of the session here today. Khalif, White House pulled the plug on Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's use of polygraph tests to root out leakers. It always seems as there's an issue with leakers everywhere when it comes to the Trump administration from the first to the second term.
This is crazy. Let me start with this. I have a crazy polygraph story. I was going through the process of becoming an FBI agent. This is a true story. And I went through all of the phases. There's a multiple choice test, kind of like the bar exam. 100 plus questions. If you do successful on that, you make it to round two. Round two is you get to be interviewed by a person here. And if you're great, you make it to the next step, which is you get a physical examination. I had a couple issues there. I thought I was in great shape. My medical report was saying a little bit different, but it gave me a chance to fix it. Past the physical portion, then you get to the PT test. All right. I was in great shape, as I mentioned, so I passed that with flying colors. Then there's this thing where they take you locally and they give you a polygraph test. Brian, I can tell you right now, I was terrified. Because you submit like a 100-page questionnaire about yourself. It's telling you about like what food you had for lunch in 4th grade, all that type of stuff, right? So then I get into this room, and I know I've already given them like a mountain of information about me. And the guy was so cool. When I first walk in, he's like, hey, I'm special agent, whatever. I've been doing this for a while.
He's buttering you up.
Right. Oh, man. It was
you
so
up for the kill.
smooth. He's like, don't worry. This is like, just a basic test. Just stay calm. Sit in this chair. It's like a really crazy
You all hooked
room.
up the wires and everything? Yeah.
Bro, it looks just like the movies. So I'm in this dark room. That machine's on the table. He's sitting across like to me from on this side. And I put my arm down. He puts the stuff on me. And I am like pouring with sweat. Like we ain't even started yet. Like I am dripping with sweat.
Flop sweats like Albert Brooks and broadcast news.
So much so that the guy was like, why are you sweating so much?
Because I know I'm getting ready to fly? No, it's just the whole process of it.
I promise you, I was 1,000% truthful, but I was so nervous. Like, first of all, it was like my potential career is resting on me failing this, because if you fail any stage,
But
then it's done.
there's some part of it that is not in your control when it comes to these type of things. Because
No,
even
no.
if you answer truthfully, you may be so nervous in your nerves or whatever, but that's the whole thing about a polygraph. It's supposed to root out all that.
It is supposed to, but I can tell you what, I was like, man, I'm guilty. That's what I wanted to stand up. Man, just stop the test. I did it. That's what I wanted to say.
Well, go back to the whole thing
Yeah.
legally about a polygraph test when it comes here to doing this to root out leakers at the Defense Department. And also for polygraph tests, when you're talking about, he says the Defense Department for national security issues of leaked national security concerns. But what about in this case and also in other cases when places do use polygraphs?
Brian, we got a couple.
How do they hold up in court?
Couple things I'd say. First of all, we had Watergate, then we had Deflategate, and then we had Signal. We had Signalgate.
Tom Brady and Deflate.
Right. I had to throw Tom Brady in there. Sorry, Patriots fans, but I'm being honest. This Signalgate sparked it all. This let Pete Hegseth know, him and his team, that we had some folks on the inside talking to some other people, and we need to button this up. Now, let's be clear. If you followed the Signalgate, you recognize that on their own, they added another person in the chat that had nothing to do with the Department of Defense.
A reporter, yeah.
Right. And so there really wasn't a leak. You guys just accidentally put somebody in there. But let's put
That's
that on
not leaking.
Right. That's not leaking. That's just called you messed up. But let's go back.
I can think of other words that they probably used on that. Yeah.
I would say that as well. We can't say that here. But being honest with you. So they go on here and they send out this memo. Hey, with recent unauthorized disclosures, this is a memo sent out by the Secretary of Defense. We're going to ensure that we root this out. We demand immediate and thorough investigation. I request your prompt assistance when figuring this out. And they're going to ensure that this process is thorough. Part of that thorough process was having each and every one of these employees that they suspected to have anything to do with this leakage to be used to go through a polygraph. So you asked the question, is it legal? There is a law on the books in the country called the Employee Polygraph Protection Act, the EPPA, not the EPA, not the Environmental Protection Agency, but the Employee Polygraph Protection Act. So I guess in the 80s when this came about, maybe companies were attempting to polygraph their employees a lot. Thus, we have this law that says it's extremely limited, that it is illegal for you to force an employee to take a polygraph. Great. However, there's some caveats in here. Certain security and pharmaceutical companies, they can use it. If you're in an ongoing investigation, it can be used. And this one right here, if you're a government employee, federal, state, local agencies, specifically with some national security involving law enforcement. So I think that the answer is most of the time, for most people listening to this, your employer cannot force you to take a polygraph. However, If you're in a situation like working for the Department of Defense, the CIA, FBI, any of those type of agencies, I think the laws that will protect most people would not protect you. However, there will be other things to protect you, but it wouldn't be any type of federal protections.
And also, one of the things too is that this is about fear and coming down on the people that you work with to make sure that you are kept in line with whatever the policies are for going forward with this administration.
Well, that fear portion is not just internally, but it's externally. It's just like any crimes that we have in this country. You have both a rehabilitative portion where you want the person to go away and then come back, but you also have the deterrence, the detrimental portion. If I see someone I know is sentenced to this crime for this amount of time, hey, I'm not going to do that because I don't want that same punishment that they got. That's exactly what's happening here is that fear, and that's kind of how it got stopped. The same way it started, which, hey, we won't steer fear in people for leaking stuff, it's the same way it stopped. This guy right here, Patrick Weaver, who was a senior advisor, he halted it by talking and complaining about it to the White House. He feared that he'd be polygraphed, and he said, hey, I don't want this to happen to me. I want it to stop. Well, connections help. That Weaver guy, who's he connected with? Stephen Miller, Deputy Chief of Staff of the White House. Stephen Miller relays this information to the president, and now they've been forced to stop this, or at least to publicly stop it. So those are the types of things that happen. You have a couple folks that are in a position of power, but my concern is that didn't have a connection with Stephen Miller. Those individuals that were already polygraphed, what happened to them? Were they terminated? Like, what were the results of the polygraph that allowed them to either keep their job or lose their job? And this is the types of things where fear, you shouldn't have people scared to go to work.
Yep. Well, the White House has nixed that program right now after a lot of backlash. And having no fear today, that would be Chief Legal Analyst Collie Froge there as he has made it through with his wonderful voice that he lost, yelling at wrestling matches all weekend. All right.
All for the good development of these kids.
That's right. You were that man, too, and I love it. That's Chief Legal Analyst Collie Froge. You've been watching Order in the Court, and we appreciate it. We're watching Queen City News Plus.
Queen City News Plus. Just search Queen City News on your smart TV's app store.